I'm going to talk about the Eel Coast, and Juris is of course going to tell us about the Latvian bagpipe traditions and other traditions in Latvia perhaps as well. So, UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, dating back to the 1940s, originates from the United Nations when it was founded, and it stands for these questions, educational, scientific and cultural questions in the United Nations family, so to say. So what then is UNESCO? Well, perhaps we do know, celebrating the peacetime after the Second World War and trying to get peace all over the world and promoting people's education, science and culture. For instance, they also work with people's health and starving people all over the world and many other different questions. But this UNESCO stands for the cultural questions and both the tangibles and intangibles. We talk about the fishing tools, the fishermen cottages, where we keep our tools, our boats, and where we also stayed during the autumn, during the fishing season, from August till November, December. So, for instance, the Eel Coast, we have both the tangibles, the fishing cottages, the fishing tools, but we have also the intangibles, the memories, the craftsmanship that is handed on from father to son for generations to the next generation. And the traditions surrounding these folklores, the craftsmanship, etc. The festivals, for instance. So an ICH is all of these intangibles, and they are ever changing over time, because people have to differ their experiences. We learn new things from generation to generation. Often we think about intangibles, about craftsmanship, for instance, that they are conservative, and in one way they are, because it's about preserving something we are doing, like a dance, like a tradition. We do it this way and have done so for generations. But still, they change. They change over time. And for instance, the eel fishing, we are supposed to change the methods, the tools, the nets, etc. They are not the same all over these coastlines because the landscape differs, the sea bottom differs. The sea and the wind and the currents differ, and then we have to adapt our tools to the local circumstances. So they are ever changing, and that's even more difficult to preserve, to keep on, to stick onto, because a building, you can preserve it, you can keep it, but a tradition that changes, how do you preserve it? And if you preserve it, does it stay in that way, always and forever? Is it allowed to change? That's a question we talk a lot about in the UNESCO and in the ICH, different organizations. So, what is an accredited NGO? Well, in order to become an accredited organization, you have to be an NGO, non-governmental organization. You do not belong to the state or any government, any politicians, so to say. You are ruled by the members, the local members in your NGO. And to become accredited to UNESCO, you have to be involved in preserving some kind of cultural heritage, like, for instance, ICH, and working with this for a couple of years in order to become an accredited organization. And then there is a large process in becoming so. You have to fulfill a lot of application reports in order to become an accredited organization at all. And then there is a long process where they take in consideration your application, what you have been doing, that you have been documenting your ICH and your cultural heritage as well, that you have an organization that is fixed, that is established, that has a lot of collaborations with the local traditions, with politicians, for instance, with other authorities, etc. And if all of these things checked and they suffice, you get an accreditation. We have done so in the Eel Coast Cultural Heritage Organization, and we became a Swedish national intangible ICH in 2015, and then in 2020 we became an accredited organization to UNESCO. So that's a shorter version of the long story. But still, we started working in this organization in 2012-13, became a Swedish accredited organization in 2015 to the Swedish government and to UNESCO in 2020. And now it's up to us to prove that we are good enough, that we do our work, our homework. We have to fill in some forms. We have to, well, quite a lot of forms actually, and we have to keep on documenting, we have to keep on doing our cultural heritage and preserving it, safeguarding it, and telling about it. And when we do so, we are supposed to fill in a final report after 4 years, and then UNESCO have a consideration again. Have you been fulfilling your job? And if so, we can keep on for another 4 years. So that's something about the Eel Coast Cultural Heritage NGO, accredited organization to UNESCO, and we are working with both the eel as a species to preserve the eel by the biodiversity, what biodiversities do the eel need as a species. We are working with water solutions, water pollution, and we are as well working with the traditions and the cultural heritage. So both ways we are working with the eel as a species and as a tradition. Very important to this region, actually. And then there is the Nordic and Baltic network of ICHs. And this organization itself was founded in Helsinki in 2019. The Eel Coast was there, and Kivik's museum. We were there together, and representing the Eel Coast and the Kivik's museum in this international Nordic-Baltic conference, the first of its kind, held in Helsinki. And in October-November, this conference was held, and we were representing there. And during this conference, at this conference, this network was founded. And the members of the board, you can see them here. Matti from Finland is the chairperson. And then Meg, who is now, she has been there is another person taking her place now from Saugobygden, and Saugobygden is the only other accredited organization in Sweden. So we are only 2 organizations in Sweden accredited to UNESCO. And then me, David, I'm also on the board of this Nordic Baltic Committee. And we work together in preserving this Nordic Baltic culture heritages. And by doing so, for instance, we have applied to the Nordic Culture Point for this conference money and for an exchange project, so we can travel to each other. Juris, you're invited here by this money. And we have made some conferences during this year, and we're going to have another conference in November, December something. And we are now applying for more money, perhaps Erasmus money, to keep on doing this Nordic network, Nordic Baltic network.